want to talk about what makes Toronto ferries safe. And we should look at the Sam McBride instance. And we know that the Sam McBride and the William Inglis were built in the 1930s, and the Thomas Rennie in the 50s. So it's an aging fleet. But let's talk about the incident for a moment that happened in August 2022, where there's 20 people injured. In 2009, it was determined by the Transportation Safety Board that 13 crew members should be on board. The city then requested that it sail with 6. And that's why we're able to say it sailed with a full complement, because the complement was actually 6, recommended 13. There was no written procedures about emergency measures and protocols in the reduction from 13 to 6. If there's no written procedures, you can imagine that there's no training and that we're just sailing with 6. The Transportation Safety Board noted that the ferry's evacuation procedures were unrealistic, leaving only 6 crew members to manage over 900 crew. And it was quoted that saying the city is very lucky with the lack of crew and emergency preparedness, that no emergency had arisen. Well, in 2022, it arose, and subsequently a couple more, right? This is a problem. And it's not actually the aging fleet in what I'm bringing forward. It's the management of the fleet. You can buy yourself a brand new vessel, put some people in there. Is it safe? Are those people trained? Is it coming from top down and bottom up? Direction around how to operate safely? And the training, the bottom-up piece, so that everybody is on the same page? We don't see that. You can look back in Transportation Canada's records all the way back to 1999, where an incident was reported that there was a lack of written procedures and emergency preparedness. And that was specifically to the Thomas Rennie. I want to give an example of what operational pressures are. Folks who are on this boat working under these, working under these conditions. The conditions are such that you take people on the boat and you get them across the islands. And yes, there is an emphasis on safety, but how are you delivering that emphasis on safety? I'll take you to an incident in 215, which you will not find in any records. Very windy day. The winds were almost double what the sailing requirements are on the Thomas Rennie certificate. The alternating captain at the time gave forewarning to the supervisor that he would not be sailing that day due to safety concerns. Quite rightly, the supervisor responded saying that is the captain's call. However, operational pressures. Another captain was subbed in to sail that very same ship in those very same conditions for that day. People were on the other side of the harbor, on City of Toronto Island, right? Not only were they bringing them there, but they had to get them back in these conditions. And I will say that the Thomas Rennie certificate was altered within a week or two after that fact of that day, in which there was a refusal to sail that ship. Altered in a way that validated the acting captain's concern, and there was delimited from having anyone on the upper tier on the Thomas Rennie at a certain wave height, right? Waves happen in that harbor, and there's wave heights in which we should be running and not running.
Ask you to wrap up, sorry.
So my concern is that we need to follow our corporate policy, which says we will meet or exceed health and safety standards, Our corporate policy doesn't even mention Transport Canada, Transportation Safety Board recommendations, any of those things. We need to ensure that even when we get our brand new electric ferry, that the overall operations for safety are created, adhered to, and trained on. These operational pressures are what are forcing people to sail faster, to do more, within the time limits to serve the public. Everyone loves the islands, and it's becoming a concern, and it is showing up the way it's showing up, which is with incidents within the fleet. Thank you, and my apologies for going over.
Thank you. Questions, anyone? Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Fletcher.
When you said the captain's call, tell me a little bit about the captain's call, saying not safe to go in the water with passengers today because of X conditions. Is that what or it must go in the water under certain circumstances?
So each, as I understand it, each vessel has a certificate that says, and you've seen in some of the newspaper reports, X amount of passengers can be on the ship.
Yeah.
At one point, the Thomas Rennie was grandfathered, and it went down from down to around 500. But then renovations took place on the Thomas Rennie. The bulkhead and engines were changed, moving it back up to 736, I believe. Right. So there's the conditions of the certificate need to be adhered to, and it's the captain's responsibility to gauge whether also the amount of passengers on the ship. That has to be insured somehow, and I'm sure that works its way through the deckhands and the first mate. Right. But all of that is a responsibility of the captain.
The captain has an important role in saying
Absolutely.
Bad conditions. And then who would override the captain then to say, well, we're going to buy, we're putting somebody else in?
Override? I'm not sure.
Somebody else went in rather than that captain. How would that happen?
There should be constant communication, in my opinion.
Happen.
Did that happen? Oh, sorry, can you rephrase?
You said the captain said, I'm not going, and then another captain was called in. Who would call that other captain in?
That would have been supervisor managers. I've got emails about that, but I don't have names. I'm not going to supply those.
Okay.
But in essence, the management team, supervisors and so forth would look for replacements.
Thank you. So the captain doesn't have as much authority as we might think. And the fact that these ferries are carrying large numbers of passengers over water adds, I'll just say, in your opinion, may add another level of risk compared to driving along Queen's Quay in a bus or the train.
Yes, you could look at it like that. There's a significant responsibility when you're on water, as there's limited exit plans in the case of an emergency and other procedures that you would have to consider being on water.
Thank you.